one. And this is one of our Localscape Rewards participants. And I want to mention that all the photos in this presentation are Utah landscapes, and most of them are Localscape Rewards participants. So before narrowing in on a small project like the side yard, make sure to create your plan for the entire landscape first. This plan here was created using our Localscape design concept, and you can see it in full scale at the Conservation Garden Park, which is this picture. If you're unfamiliar with Localscape's elements, I will go over them briefly, but if you want more information or need help creating your Localscape design plan, take our free Localscape University or Intro to Localscapes classes on Teachable, or sign up for one of our live webinars. But here are the 5 elements of a Localscape. So the first is the central open shape, and this is the main focal point of a Localscape. It provides a resting place for the eye and contrasts the rest of the landscape, and you can't have a Localscape without a central open shape. And the second is gathering areas. These are the spaces in the landscape designed for socializing and relaxing. And then activity zones are the third element, and they are areas where special function is taking place. Paths are next, and they are the connectors of the landscape. In a Localscape, grass is never used as a path. And then lastly, planting beds evolve throughout the landscape and are the default ground cover. So it's common to see landscapes with grass as the default ground cover, but when our design starts with the placement of the grass area and then we go from there, we have a more functional, usable yard, and we eliminate a lot of water waste. So once you have a plan, you can narrow in on a small project like the side yard. Just make sure you know how your small project will affect the rest of the landscape. So irrigation, paths, hardscape, those are all things you'll want to consider when just completing your landscape in phases. A lot of times irrigation can kind of be half in one area and half in the other. So you might need to make a map and color code all your zones, and then you'll know which heads to cap or move so that you can just do the side yard or just another small portion at a time. So this here is a typical Utah side yard. It's predominantly grass, and it's really only used as a pass-through area. Most of the time spent here is mowing and maintaining it. And side yards can be a mystery to some people, and when, you know, it's common when you don't know what to do with a space, you just put in lawn. We see that all the time. But there are better ways to take this underutilized area and turn it into a space that's more functional and usable for you and your family. So there are also some problems with having grass in the side yard, as you may know. Extreme shade, like this picture on the left, or even extreme sun are frequent problems for side yards, and you might even experience both of these conditions in the side yard on either side of the same property. And grass just doesn't do well in either extreme. And then also this area can get a lot of traffic and cause soil compaction. Dogs, they are, you know, one of the biggest causes of this. They always run in the same spot, and they kind of create these little compaction trails. Or if you're always walking, your family's always walking in the same spot, this can happen. And grass doesn't like to grow there. And then slopes also create runoff and drainage problems. So when you're irrigating with an overhead irrigation system, the grass at the top is usually starved for water, and the grass at the bottom becomes, you know, oversaturated. So grass just doesn't grow there either. And then small areas of grass don't really serve a function. So looking at this picture, which side yard would you rather have? The grass on the left has no purpose. It's even obstructed by these utility boxes, which make it harder to mow around and less efficient to water. And those boxes are also a focal point, so they draw your eye in, and plants help to disguise these unwanted objects in our landscapes, like those trash cans in the back. If it was just all grass right here, those trash cans would stand out a lot more than they do. So if you have things like this that you want to disguise, why not use plants? In a local-scape side yard, this space just becomes more functional. It's no longer just a pass-through area. This side yard invites you to slow down and enjoy the beauty, and it also saves water. So some of you may have already taken or you've already flipped your strip and even participated in our Flip Your Strip rebate program. And now you're ready for the next step. And the side yard is a great small project, and it can be accomplished in one season. And it's just a great next step if you're ready to move on. Side yards are unique in every landscape. They are all very different, and they come with their own special considerations. So keep in mind which site considerations apply to your side yard as I address each one and its solution. So exposure. Exposure can create a microclimate and make this area very hot or very shady. If you have a west or south facing exposure, your side yard might be very hot and sunny. And the solution might be to use this space for a vegetable garden. So this landscape is in South Jordan, and they utilize this sunny space for a beautiful and very productive, as you can see, vegetable garden. Sunny side yards can also be a great spot for fruit trees. If you want to grow fruit trees in this space and your side yard's a little bit more on the narrow side, consider the espalier varieties just like these here, which do well in narrow areas. And then if your exposure's more shady, if you're east or north facing, or if you just have large mature trees that have created shade, that's a common one. And the solution might be to use this area to put a gathering area in this space. So shade might be tricky for growing food, but it's an excellent spot for passive recreation and socializing. If you have a smaller lot, your side yard might be very narrow. We see this a lot with newer construction. Just lot sizes are kind of shrinking, and there's a lot of infill construction that creates just awkward shaped properties. So very narrow side yards are more and more common. And for a narrow side yard, all you may need is a hardscape path and a planting bed like these homeowners have implemented in their side yards. So here are some common path materials that we have seen from some of our Local Scape Rewards participants. This one on the left, reclaimed concrete. This is a great way to use material that's already in your landscape if you have to remove any concrete. And then you can fill in the cracks with gravel or chat or another fine hardscape material. And it looks really cool, as you can see in this photo. And then if you need a surface that you can push a lawnmower on or roll trash cans on, keep that in mind. If you want a do-it-yourself project, flagstone chips, decomposed granite, or chat or gravel are all great options. Some of those are compactable, so if you're wanting to, be able to push that lawnmower on it, make sure you get a compactable hardscape material. But it's a great do-it-yourself project. And then another solution for a narrow side yard is just a gravel utility area. So we often see fenced in side yards with no gates in the landscape of our participants. So this kind of creates a little like dead end area that never gets used except for utility maintenance work. So we recommend don't waste your time maintaining that plants in that area or your money watering that space. Just put in gravel, and if you want, you could even add some interest like this homeowner did with these stones. But really, gravel is perfectly great for that dead end area. And then sometimes cul-de-sac lots or other irregularly shaped lots can create awkward landscape situations like large side yards. So if your side yard is larger than your backyard, you might want to choose to switch out their purposes and make the side yard the location for active recreation area, just like this side yard with a center open shape of grass in it. Another solution would be a gathering area, adding a gathering area in a large side yard. Activity zones like vegetable gardens, play areas, and chicken coops are also great solutions for large side yards. All landscapes need storage and access, so the side yard can be kind of the key or the obstacle to achieving both of those goals. But before determining what function you want your side yard to have, just ask yourself, does the space need to be a utility area? Does it need to have storage, or does it need to be a pass-through area? And keep that in mind as you're planning out this space. So if you have storage needs, the solution might be to place a shed in this area. The side yard can be a great spot for a shed. And then don't forget to think about your garbage cans. The side yard is a common place to store our trash. And like I said before, keep in mind the surface that you're putting in this area so it's easy to roll those cans on. And I have this great example of a way to kind of hide your cans but still make them really accessible and close by. You can see this landscape. They put a planting bed in the front and then a fence, and you can see if you around the corner, those trash cans are just tucked away right there. And it makes them really accessible, but also you can't see them from the street. And then additional parking is a common function many homeowners want in their side yards. So keep in mind that this area can always just be additional parking or an RV pad. And we always like when people put in like a planting bed or something that will kind of soften the concrete. So it doesn't have to just be straight concrete. You can kind of soften it with adding a planting bed. A lot of people do like a triangle planting bed and they can park a car at an angle. So that works too. I would say the larger the planting bed, the better for your plants, but it's a great solution. Another side yard consideration is creating a sense of separation from neighbors, including privacy for windows close to the property line. So columnar plants can be used to create a planted privacy screen if that's what you want in your side yard. Just make sure you choose plants that can handle the unique conditions and the space. There are a lot of tall, narrow shrubs and even trees that can be used to create privacy in a side yard. Just make sure they aren't oversized or planted too close to each other, or foundations like your house or your fence. You can see here these were just recently planted, and you're not going to achieve that plant screen, you know, the full blocked privacy right away, because you need to give those plants their space and make sure you're not planting them too close. We see so often people they're not patient and they just plant them right next to each other from the get-go, so they have that privacy right away. But then down the road in a few years, you're going to have so much maintenance just trying to keep those, or you might have to remove some and start over even, so it's not worth it. And then many locals have challenges with slopes, and that makes the side yard kind of awkward and harder to deal with. So in steep side yards, retaining walls might be required. Keep in mind anything over 4 feet tall requires engineering, and the design and implementation should not be performed by the homeowner. So, and even if you have really steep steps, you might want to consider a handrail for safety, but it's always a great option for a slope. Another option for a slope is using one of those hard or compactable hardscape materials that I mentioned, like chat. This is chat here. And this path, you can tell just by looking at that angle on the foundation. You can tell how steep this is, and we were really impressed how sturdy that chat was once it's compacted. So you just buy it as a loose rock, and then you lay it down and you wet it quite a bit, and then you can walk on it to compact it, or you can get a tool to compact it. And we were just really impressed how sturdy that was with how steep that slope was. So here are some inspiration, just some photos for side yard inspiration. This happens to be the former yard of one of today's instructors, Mike Lawrence. It's great. He just used a lot of plants, perennials to create color and interest, and there's a pathway to that gate. This side yard just is very simple. They have these fruit trees on the side there, and then they're really just using like 1 or 2 plants in rows. You don't have to pick out a ton of plants. You can just keep it simple, and this is going to be a lot easier to maintain because you're just maintaining 2 types of plants. And it just looks really clean and simple and beautiful. And then they have this flagstone path. And then this side yard just uses a lot of perennials and adds a lot of color and texture and interest. So why not add curb appeal to your front yard by replacing that grass in your side yard with something beautiful like this? And this path it looks like the medium flagstone chips, which make a great path material, and it's just so inviting. It kind of invites you into the backyard, and like I said, adds a lot of curb appeal. And then this side yard was very shady, so the homeowner kind of took advantage of that and put in this nice pond water feature here, and they have some hostas and some shade plants with a pathway. And so this shows you that you can have a shady side yard and still have a really beautiful area. And then this side yard, when this side yard becomes a little more mature, it's just going to be so stunning. So these colors together, the red barberry and the sumac, is just striking next to each other. And the mulch here is, I think it's a medium flagstone chips. It could be a larger flagstone chips, but they look so great. It's a great mulch option. All right, so that's side yard swap. I hope that you are all inspired to now go take the grass out of your side yard.
There was one question that I saw that we answered, but I think it would be worth talking about live. So you mentioned vegetable gardens, right, as an option for a side yard. And someone was just wondering if there's concerns having a vegetable garden next to the foundation. And we said, as long as the water isn't pooling up against the foundation, it shouldn't be a big deal. But how often have you seen that, Bailey, with people using vegetable gardens in their side yard in these finished localscapes?
You could always put the vegetable garden like up against the fence and then have your pathway next to the foundation. I feel like I haven't really seen a lot that like are right next to the foundation.
Okay.
But if you're watering with drip, I mean, you might not have a problem because it's so slow.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of problems with foundations when they're just being constantly sprayed with that overhead spray from which is watering the grass. It does damage, but it also can kind of leave like a kind of like an arc pattern on your house if you have hard water. So that's another reason. Or even your fence. I've seen it a ton. Just it leaves that mark on the fence. So it's another reason to take the grass out of your side yard.
Sounds good. There was a question about this says, what was the last ground cover? So there's probably a ground cover that you showed towards the end. They're just wondering what it is.
Which one? That doesn't have.
That's a good question.
Was it that one?
Maybe.
All right, maybe they mean mulch.
Yeah.
So I think this is the flagstone chips.
Okay.
Sean, do you know that it looks bigger than the medium one? Is there a larger one? Because that might
Yeah,
be. Okay.
there is a larger one. I know that flagstone chips are in relative short supply this year.
Yeah, so I know the ones that are super compactable, the fines are in short supply, but it's a little bit easier to find the medium ones or maybe even these large ones. So
Yeah. Would you recommend using wood chips as an option for mulch?
yeah, I love using wood chips because I love taking advantage of like arborist chips and getting them for a really cheap or low cost. If you can go to getchipdrop.com and a lot of arborists use that website. You just have to give them a tip and they'll drop off at your house. Or if you know an arborist, you can just reach out and ask for the chips. Yeah, I love using those services because it's a really great way to just cover your whole yard with not spending very much. And they drop it off at your house, which is great. So you don't have to have a truck or a trailer to go pick it up.
Yeah, it's a great option. I know I've been on a few arborist websites recently, and I've seen a few of them advertising right on their website that they'll come drop off wood chips for people,
Yeah.
even outside of the chip drop software.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Um,
Get Chip Drop is getting a little busy, so
yeah,
there's an option to not provide a tip, but I think at this point they're so busy that you pretty much have to, but you might be able to just contact an arborist and have more luck that way.
and I know for my own yard, I just end up going to the landfill typically.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, at least up in Davis County, their landfill, the mulch that you get there is basically just arborist wood chips because they're just running trees and shrubs that they get dropped off at the landfill in the green waste area. They're just running it through the chipper. That's
Okay, yeah.
basically arborist chips too. So you can check out your local landfill for that.
Yeah, and I like arborist chips because I always find with compost mulch, there's usually always some kind of seeds in there. I've just had bad luck. So with those wood chips, I just never have a problem with having weed seeds, and I think it's a great option, and it looks really nice.
I agree. Um, there's some questions about just like general costs between path materials. Um, can you go through some of those, Bailey? Like what's more on the expensive end and then what's cheaper options for path materials?
Okay, yeah. So I think like a gravel is going to be on the cheaper end. And then if you're going to do it yourself, I feel like chat or decomposed granite, those are both going to be a little bit cheaper because you can do it yourself. And you could even put down a few inches of road base and then like 1 or 2 inches of the chat or decomposed granite so that you have a cheaper material underneath and then the more expensive material on top. And so you're not using as much. And then, if you're going to pay someone to put in pavers, that's going to be pretty pricey, or concrete can be a little expensive right now. So that's kind of how I would rank it. But if you're doing it yourself, then that kind of changes things a lot. So.
All right. Someone asked what the website is for the wood chips. That's Chip Drop. Let's see. I know I saw another question in the Q&A about solarizing lawn.
Okay.
Can you talk about that real quick, Bailey, and how someone might undertake that as like part of their side yard project?
Yeah, so to kill the lawn, one of the options is to solarize it. So that's just, you would kill it with like a plastic sheet. You could use clear plastic or black plastic, it doesn't matter. And it just uses the power of the sun to essentially just bake your grass. It does take a few weeks, and you do have to do it at the hottest time of the year, so like July, August. Um, but yeah, it does take a few weeks, so you'll want to make sure you can leave it on there for an extended amount of time. But it's a great way to kill that grass. And we always recommend killing the grass before removing it. I killed my grass in the spring and it was still a little bit dormant. And then I removed it and I'm still seeing grass come up that wasn't killed because it was dormant. So it's kind of a little bit of a headache and I wouldn't recommend it. So definitely make sure grass is killed all the way before you remove it and put that mulch in.
Sounds good. Um, I saw, it looks like it's being answered in the Q&A right now, but I hear every once in a while people have concerns about using arborist wood chips, like it will spread disease, or there's going to be termites, or it's going to make their soil acidic, or I hear all these things,
Mm-hmm.
which I understand why people are concerned about those, but at least from what I've seen, um, most university studies say that arborist wood chips are actually the best way to go, and they've found no correlation between it spreading
Mm-hmm.
diseases to other plants or acidifying the soil, or I even know people have concerns about pine needles dropping off their trees and acidifying the soil. There's no evidence that that does that either. So at
Yeah,
least in any significant way. So I think, and you'll probably agree, Bailey, that arborist wood chips are a really good way to go and they're inexpensive.
definitely. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said.
Um, let's see. All right, that Q&A box keeps moving on me, which is not helpful. What about, okay, so this one that just came in says, since watering in side yards seems problematic, can you recommend any native or no water plants that might make good feature plants alongside a path, etc.?
So it depends on your exposure. I mean, every plant that you put in will need to have establishment watering. If you're watering with drip, watering in your side yard is not that problematic. It's really slow, so there's not as many problems with it. But for like specific recommendations, I don't know. Sean, do you have any recommendations for like of specific plants that would tolerate that? I mean, it really depends on your exposure, but
Yeah, so any plant that you put in, isn't going to be no water.
Yeah.
You have to establish the plant, even if it is a native plant. And I think Mahonia or Oregon grape,
Mm-hmm.
once you get established and rooted in, could handle either a full sun or a full shade side yard really well. And Oregon grape is a pretty common plant to find at most nurseries. You can buy creeping Oregon grape that stays pretty low, or there's a more standard Oregon grape that gets maybe in the 4 to 5 foot range. There's some that gets taller than that too. But that would do pretty well in a side yard, I think.
Yeah, if they didn't want to water it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trying to think of any others. Any of our other panelists that you can jump in if you have ideas also. Side yard plants that take little water. There's a few smaller perennials that could take tiny amounts of water and be okay once established. Like one of our favorites is Sundance or Daisy.
Yeah, that's actually right here, right? This plant.
Yep, right there. So you can see it's not a very big plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Desert 4 o'clock might do well.
Desert
Would
4
get
o'clock.
big.
There's lots of penstemons that are native
Mm-hmm.
to Utah that once they get rooted in and established, they don't need a lot of water. In fact, there's some, if you watered them, you're likely to kill them because we don't have well draining soil around here. Most people have clay. So there's some penstemons that
Mm-hmm.
are sold at most nurseries these days that you can find and put in. So
Yeah, you can find quite a bit of the natives too at nurseries now. So you can look for those. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be native, just something that's tolerant of low water.
yeah, and I think using native plants are great, but a conclusion that we've been coming to at the garden lately is just because it's native doesn't mean it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
no water and no maintenance, or that it's even going to
Yeah.
work. Because technically, aspens are native to Utah, but they're horrible in our landscapes down in the valley
Mm-hmm.
floor. And really, there's not a lot of plants that you can buy at a nursery that are native to our valley floor. There's some that you can buy that are native to our mountains, and they work pretty
Exactly.
well when you bring them down to the valley floor, but you have to water them more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you can just plant them and forget them. So, okay. There's a question. It looks like it's being answered, but I see this one every once in a while. People wanting to use soaker hose instead of standard drip line. What are your thoughts on using soaker hose in like a landscape situation rather than drip line?
So I would just recommend drip line because the whole line pressurizes before it starts releasing water. Whereas that soaker hose, the closer you are to the spigot is just gonna have a lot more water than at the end of the line. So you're not gonna have an even uniform watering. So I just recommend the drip, the inline or point source drip.
All right, yeah, I agree with that. I think the other issue that you'll come across with soaker hose, it is not durable long
Yeah.
term in a landscape setting. It'll fall apart. So that's why we recommend the drip line.